harassing the police every single day.
A bill that just passed the Florida Senate would send a clear message to people to get out of the way of first responders in the field. A similar bill is working through the House as well, but has a ways to go. Now, if someone gets too close to police or paramedics in the field, they would face a first-degree misdemeanor, and that's punishable by up to a year in prison. Or jail, I should say. WEAR's Yona Gavino is live in the studio now, and Yona, senators were all in agreement about this measure.
They sure were, Bob, and the bill is sponsored by Senator Brian Avila of Miami Springs, but Senator Doug Broxson, who represents citizens of Northwest Florida, threw his full support behind the legislation, and so do the Pensacola Police Department.
14 feet. That's the distance lawmakers believe could make things safer for police officers on the job.
This is really a common sense law with the pressure that police are under now.
I talked to Senator Doug Broxson, who's all for the bill to criminalize people getting too close to police and other first responders on a scene. It comes with a 14-foot rule mandating that people stay back, a distance that Broxson agrees isn't the easiest to enforce.
It will be imperfect unless they rope it off, and you normally don't rope off until after the situation has been resolved. But it is a arbitrary number, and I think I doubt if it will ever be questioned.
It criminalizes getting too close to police officers and other first responders working on the job. Let me show you just how far 14 feet is. 13, 14 right here. It applies to people who approach active crime scenes, and yes, it also applies to members of the media.
I'm not the sponsor, but my guess is that they got with Florida Highway Patrol, they got with the city police, county sheriff's office, and said, what would be the optimum space you need to operate safely?
The bill states anyone who tries to impede, threaten, harass, or physically prevent the first responder from doing their job could face a first-degree misdemeanor punishable by up to a year in prison. Pensacola police officer Mike Wood said bystanders are fine to record officers on the job as long as they are obeying the rule.
If they're videoing the incident, that is fine too. We welcome that because we're doing the same thing. We don't care about that as long as they're back far enough to where they can't interfere with the officer or the arrest.
But there will be instances where empathy takes over.
When people have a family member that's in distress, we totally understand that. We get that. They want to see what's going on. They want to make sure they're okay, and we totally understand that. We're not going to arrest somebody for checking on a family member that's in distress. Now, if there's other situations to where we have had to arrest family members, if we're trying to arrest one family member and other family members get involved in that, then we have to make an arrest. We have to do that at sometimes.
Another example, the deadly condo collapse in Surfside, Florida. Nearly 100 people died, and there were cases of desperate family members racing past police just to try to get to their missing or injured loved ones. In these situations, emotional relatives would not face the threat of violation.
A similar bill is now in the House Criminal Justice Subcommittee, but has seen no legislative action since January 23rd. Of course, both chambers would have to work out any differences in their bills and pass them before the legislation can be sent to the governor. Live in the studio, Yona Gavino, WEAR News.
Florida legislature passes no-go zone around first responders despite transparency concerns. Douglas Soul, USA Today Network, Florida. Before House lawmakers pushed through a bill on Wednesday creating a 25-foot no-go zone around first responders such as police, its sponsor reassured worried lawmakers that it wasn't a done deal and there would be a better version. There wasn't. The measure passed the Senate as is Thursday, with no changes to address the fears from a number of black Democratic lawmakers that it would be used to prevent their constituents from documenting police brutality. The bill now heads straight to Governor Ron DeSantis. I am deeply disappointed that this bill, which was supposed to include a cooperative effort by both Democrats and Republicans in the House to improve its language, has passed in its current form in the Senate, said Representative LaVon Bracy Davis, DOCOE. In a statement, they pushed forward with an unwillingness to be cooperative and passed a bill that will only be weaponized against black people. If signed, the legislation, SB 184, would create a second-degree misdemeanor for anyone who, after a warning, approaches or remains within 25 feet of working first responders with the intent to harass, threaten, impede or interfere. That's punishable by up to 60 days behind bars. The bill, which would take effect November 1st, doesn't include a provision that was in the House version. It specifically says peaceful audio or video recording, photographing, or eyewitness over-serving wouldn't be affected. Bracy Davis had filed an unsuccessful amendment to get that language back in. The only reason we know what happened to George Floyd is because of a girl who was filming his murder close by, and it is apparent to me today that this body is more concerned with the comfort of the police officer than it is with justice and truth, she said. Rep. Alex Rizzo, a Hialeah Republican, told lawmakers on Wednesday that he was working very hard with the Senate sponsors to make changes so it could come back to the House for another vote. "You have my word," Rizzo said, "we're going to get it in a much better place." He emphasized that the bill was about first responder safety and the safety of those present at the scene of an emergency, not about preventing people from documenting police abuses. Bill sponsor Senator Brian Avila, R. Miami Springs, said on that chamber's floor that recording is already constitutionally permissible. Only one senator, a Democrat, voted against it. Senator Bobby Powell, D. West Palm Beach, pointed out how close the person who filmed the police murder of Floyd stood and that there could be obstructions blocking view of something happening 25 feet away. But Senator Jason Pizzo, a North Miami Beach Democrat, came out strongly in support but said he thought the distance should be even further. "I think sometimes it's not enough," he said. "It might be 25 feet. It might be 250 feet. If responders during 9/11 said get back on two huge towers, that distance to get back is likely a mile. The 25-foot distance is longer than what either chamber's bill had originally. The House proposal set it at 20 feet, and the Senate, which also used to have a first-degree misdemeanor punishment, had 14 feet. The final legislation met a lot more Democratic opposition in the House Wednesday, passing by a 85 to 27 vote. I asked the question about where does the 25 feet start, and I got no real answer, said Democratic Representative Ashley Gant of Miami before the Wednesday vote, mentioning how there could be numerous first responders at an emergency scene. She added, "This can very well be weaponized by police officers. I want to record, but where do I have the ability to record without jeopardizing my freedom?" This reporting content is supported by a partnership with Freedom Forum and journalism funding partners. USA Today Network Florida First Amendment reporter Douglas Soul can be reached at dsoul@gannett.com.